Oh, this isn't going to be controversial.
Yeah, well, it might be actually because the way I am, I'm not particularly a fan of Western governments and NGOs, the WEF and NATO and all that kind of stuff. And basically, my views on this haven't changed. But a couple of years ago, a thing happened in Ukraine, and all of a sudden, I started having people telling me that I was a Putin shill or something because I was anti-NATO and all of these sorts of things. And to begin with, I just sort of just knocked it back. But then I got fed up with it and I thought, oh, fuck it, let's just roll with it then. So basically what I want to do in this segment is
so hang on. So your evolution of
well, I'm still not pro Putin, which is why this segment is called I don't like Putin, but because he is a sort of managerial elite. He's a thugster, he's a dictator, he's all of those things.
But why were you getting shtick? Were you not sufficiently anti-Putin, or because? I don't know how social media works, but I think if you don't pay a certain level of lip service, then that people find.
Well, basically, because I'm critical of the way that Western governments have behaved overseas and organisations like NATO and so on in the US State Department and so on, and what they did is a very reductive. If you're not on our side, you're on his side.
Oh, okay.
So
I see.
By extension, you must be pro-Putin, which, like I said, I did knock back, but eventually you just get to the point. You think, well, okay, well, why don't we just compare him to what we've got then, and see how that measures up? So again, still, I'm not being pro-Putin, but let's start with this video. Now, the setup here is
actually a lot shorter in person. What is he, like 5'7"?
Yeah, the boss energy in this though. You wait till you see the boss energy. I'm going to have to live dub it as we go for the people who are listening rather than watching because it's in Russian. But basically, the setup here is he's turned up to a dispute, an industrial dispute that's been dragging on. So let's listen to this and I'll dub it.
Vladimir Putin strode into town.
Почему раньше здесь не было людей, которые способны были принимать решения? Почему здесь-то забегали все как тараканы перед самым моим приездом?
Unlike Medvedev, Putin confronted the factory owners.
Считаю, что вы сделали заложниками своих амбиций, непрофессионализма, а может быть просто и тривиальной жадности. Тысячи людей.
These are thousands of lives.
Это абсолютно недопустимо.
It's absolutely unacceptable.
Если собственники договориться между собой
не смогут, то when this factory will be restarted,
единый комплекс все равно будет восстановлен. В том или в другом виде, то это будет сделано без вас.
I'll do it without you.
He demanded the owners, including billionaire Oleg Deripaska, sign an undertaking to restart the factories.
Вы подписали этот договор?
Did everybody sign this agreement?
Олег Владимирович подписал?
Jessica, have you signed it? I can't see your signature. Sign it. And this is the best bit coming up here. Here's the agreement. Give me back my pen.
Classic Putin.
That billionaire oligarch made to look like a little schoolboy. So anyway, boss energy.
You can see just from the body language, you can kind of see the training he had on the KGB. Just the ability, because the ability to influence and to intimidate just comes across with the way he speaks. He uses very short sentences. He's very blunt, obviously, which I think is more of an Eastern European thing. But his body language is very open. I mean, I don't know if you've heard of this. Narendra Modi, PM of India. There was this meme about him based on something that he said, that he has a 32-inch chest, and his whole kind of masculine persona is the fact that he's an unmarried man, he's a bachelor, he's dedicated himself to the state of India, and he has a really broad chest. So when he walks around, you can see he kind of pushes his scapula down and his shoulders back. And Putin has the same kind of body language. I mean, before obviously the war in Ukraine, I used to post memes because he was very almost like a caricature for me, like that whole ultra machismo. But you can actually analyze it. You can study the way his physicality kind of I don't know, ameliorates his persona, I guess.
Yeah.
He doesn't have to throw punches.
It's just the whole confident masculine energy that he projects.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I find it fascinating. Also memeable, but also fascinating.
Yeah, and then so that's Putin, right? Confident, capable, in command, getting things done, masculine energy. Let's compare that to next video, please. This is Rishi Sunak trying to look hard with his banging beats. I'm going to stop the boats. Roll it.
Here are 5 things I'm doing to stop the boats. First, I'm bringing in new laws that will mean if you come to the UK illegally, you can't stay, no matter how hard you try. Second, I've secured a deal with France that will help stop the
Let's get rid of him. We won't have to listen to the whole thing.
This is like GCSE drama from a boy in public school. Do you know what I mean? It kind of gives, as someone who unfortunately knows loads of people that went to public school, it gives that like quiet, I'm just going to do it because I need a C grade.
It's impotent energy, this one.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Trudeau is a perfect example.
Oh yeah. I could have easily added Trudeau to this, but
I made a point of saying I could never go near Trudeau like in a sexual capacity. He's just so repulsive to me and most women I know.
Trudeau is feminine energy. Well, at least Rishi Sunak is just neutered male energy.
Yeah, it's just kind of public school boy that's given up. Trudeau is just unacceptable.
Right, and if you think
that doesn't have testicles, but Trudeau is probably a rapist, is the kind of thing I have.
No, I don't think Trudeau is.
I get like male feminist vibes
from Trudeau.
Yes, which
I actually don't think he's attracted to women, but that's a different conversation.
That's probably true. Right, now if you think Sunak was bad, let's have a look at. Oh, and the other thing about Sunak, right, is even when he goes, we're just going to get we're going to get Starmer, aren't we? So some WEF trilateral commission.
It's interesting how Western politics has evolved. Now we've evolved to be almost repulsed by a masculine, like machismo man, when it really should come down to the actual politics, what they're proposing and all of that. But we've now curated kind of what we think is an acceptable leader or archetype of a leader to be almost like a neutered man.
Yeah, I was talking about this in Contemplations Contemplations are not out yet with Josh, and we're talking about that and about how sort of Western power structures have become very feminized. And with masculine power structures that we used to have and Russia still has today, there's a very clear line. Yeah. And if you cross it or even look like you're about to approach it, you basically get told no, that's the line. Whereas in very feminine power structures such as we've got today, it's very much based on emotion and it can move from day to day. And it's all about feelings, how you've made people feel. Like we talked about in the first segment, have you made people feel like you're being racist or anti-Semitic or whatever it is?
I think maybe because our view of leadership has evolved, I guess. I don't know if it's for
devolved,
a good thing.
Yes.
I was about to say, I don't know if it's a positive or a negative thing. Back in the day, we used to think a leader was strong and made decisions. He took responsibility, he or she took responsibility and all of that. And now we just have someone who brings everyone together and makes you feel warm and tries to be kind of almost complacent and appeasing. It's I've seen it in my lifetime and I find it quite interesting, I guess.
Yeah.
It's strange to me because that's still not the conception of leadership that I have. But that's because I didn't grow up.
Well, the next example doesn't even do that. Can we play the Joe Biden clip?
He's alive.
So this is Biden on the stage. For those of you listening, he's coming out. He's trying to do the robot. He's a bit confused. He's forgotten where he is. He's trying to get off the stage, but there's no ladder
Mr.
there.
President, thank you.
And the compere is now trying to rescue him by talking until somebody can go up there and get him.
The word thank you seems kind of inadequate, but for all the millions...
And there's 100 clips like this, obviously. There he is. He's about to fall off the stage, so they have to pan away from him so that somebody can catch him.
This makes me sad.
Yes.
It does make me sad because he should be somewhere eating pudding in a retirement home somewhere.
Well, yeah, and the point is that's the guy leading a nuclear superpower.
Oh, he's not leading it. This is the thing. He's not doing anything.
Yes.
Like Biden's administration is Obama 2.0. Can we just everyone pulling the strings in the back end are from Obama's administration. This man doesn't know anything. He makes no decisions. I think he's limited to a 5-hour working day, which is patently absurd. I can't
impressive at his age and his level of dementia. But
exactly, yeah, bless him.
But the reason I bring up Biden in sort of direct comparison to Putin is, according to YouGov, I found a poll that suggested that Putin has a 21% approval rating in America.
I suspect.
Biden has a 36% approval rating in America. So Putin is only 15 points behind Biden in America.
Did they dissect like by age and sort of various demographics?
Yeah.
Where his support base in the US lies? Because I suspect it's probably young men that are just sick of seeing kind of this infantilized political system that is rife amongst the West. Where it's not only infantilized, it's also very gynocentric, I suppose, and very aged, very tame. just a different kind of.
The things that attract me to Putin is that he has a sort of
I want to put a caveat there because that's like, the things that attracted me to Putin.
Well, yeah, not to be taken out of context is he promotes his own national interest. He's got a strong sense of Russia, which Western countries is almost illegal to be pro-Western in Western countries now.
This is why we love Eastern Europe in general. It's not just Russia, of course. I mean, the people who love Putin or will post memes about him usually are obsessed also with Poland and in particular Hungary.
Yes.
Because both of their leaders, when they come out, whichever one's in charge, will be like, well, it's not in Hungarian interest, so no, we're not going to do it.
I would go further and I would say that it's basically everyone but the West. I don't even think it's just. I mean, obviously, Putin is an example of that kind of ultra national. But I think genuinely, the West has an acute problem of kind of an identity crisis that I don't see anywhere. You can meet someone from Ecuador, you can meet someone from Malaysia, you can meet someone from anywhere, and there's still a sense of sort of national identity and national pride. It just doesn't exist in the West, and you know, obviously.
Well, that's exactly what I'm picking up on. Yes, national pride and leadership and confidence in yourselves as a people.
Yeah.
The reason I bring up those two is just because that's the ones that usually get given as an example. I mean, I guess maybe the leader of Singapore, I forget his name.
Yeah.
He's no longer in charge because I think he might be dead actually. But the point being,
Lee Kuan.
When do you ever hear a British politician say, actually, we won't invade Iraq because it's not in UK interest? America, if you want to, that's fine. We're just not paying a penny.
Yes.
Not interested. I mean, when would a British leader, whichever next war the Americans drag us into,
we're a satrapy.
I mean, the alternative would you'd go to the Americans normally and say, okay, we'll join you, but you need to give us $1 billion per division.
I mean, to an extent,
they will never do that.
To an extent, the French have that. To an extent, I mean, but they've always had one eye elsewhere because of kind of their colonial past and all of that. But I think, but they've always had that. Even not Sarkozy, the guy that came after him, Hollande, this impotent, like useless socialist. He still had a sense of that, right? That just doesn't exist in, I would say, the UK and certainly not the US anymore, depending on where the election swings next year.
The other thing that I think that he's done effectively is there is this. I mean, this is how politics really works. It's the friend-enemy distinction that underlies all of this. And basically, what's happened is, and this is something that really came out from a conversation I had, which is the segment I'm going to promote. John, I'm going to skip a couple of items. Let's just go to the Brokenomics, which is coming out later today. Yeah, that one. So that's a segment I'm going to promote today. So it's the Brokenomics, the economics of empire with Neema Parvini. We really got into this distinction as to how politics operates, and effectively this whole thing that war is a continuation of politics by other means. We sort of discussed actually really no, it's the other way around. The war comes first because the friend-enemy distinction comes first, and the friend-enemy distinction is very clear, very useful for when you're fighting a war. It's not very useful when you're trying to build bridges or opera theatres, all the rest of it. So you build this body of law up, but it has to work on the basis that we are all friends, that we are all together on some sort of national project. And that is exactly the mechanism that's broken down in the West. The friend-enemy distinction has re-emerged, and it's particularly stark in the US at the moment, where basically you've got segments of America completely at war with each other. What Putin has done, which is the attractive thing in this sense, is he has had this sort of iron fist and brutal dictatorship and murderous approach to all of these things, which is, yes, fair. That's all good criticism. But he is basically united Russia as if you are going to operate in Russia today, you have to be a friend of Putin.
Mutual interests are being continually defined, and I think he's more upfront about it. I think the West isn't.
Yeah,
I think
exactly.
That's what it boils down to.
And once everybody's now in the tent of being a friend of Putin, they can then get on with doing things in a cooperative fashion, which just can't function in the West at the moment. But that does mean that certain things basically just get pushed out of the political arena, certain things that we're not going to discuss. So the criticism of Putin that you hear all the time is that he's not friendly enough to the alphabet people. So let's go to what Putin thinks about the gays. John.
That's actually a video. What Putin thinks that this is. Oh my God.
Yes. Let's hear him in his own. I don't even need to live dub this one because the BBC have done it for me.
You know, I can't answer the part of your question about whether homosexuals are born or made. That is beyond my professional interest. I'm just not qualified to respond.
Квалифицированного ответа я просто не смогу дать. Обращаю ваше внимание на то, что в России нет уголовной
I would like to draw your attention to the fact that in Russia, unlike in one-third of world's countries, being gay is not a crime.
В 70 странах мира предусмотрена уголовная
In
ответственность
70 countries, there is criminal liability for
В
homosexuality,
7 странах
and in
мира
7 of those countries, they have the
предусмотрена
death
смертная
penalty
казнь.
for homosexuality.
Принят недавно только закон, запрещающий пропаганду.
We have recently passed a law prohibiting propaganda, and not of homosexuality only, but of homosexuality and child abuse, child sexual abuse.
Вот, но
But this is nothing to do with persecuting individuals for their sexual orientation.
за их сексуальную ориентацию. Это две большие разницы, как у нас говорят.
There is a world of difference between these two things, so there is no danger for individuals of this non-traditional sexual orientation who are planning to come to the games as visitors or
В
participants.
качестве гостей либо участников Олимпиады не существует.
What about the Russian church people who have called for the return of criminal law against homosexual people? Do you
This is where he
support
makes
that?
a
Are
good
you
point.
horrified by it? What's your attitude?
Значит, у нас церковь по закону отделена от государства.
In law, the church is separate from the state and has the right to its own point of view.
Обращаю ваше внимание также на то, что
I would also like to point out that almost all traditional world religions agree on this topic.
занимают солидарную позицию по этой теме. А что, разве позиция
Is the position of the Holy See different from that of the Russian Orthodox Church?
от позиции Русской Православной Церкви? А разве ислам как-то по-другому
Does
относится
Islam treat individuals with non-traditional sexual orientation differently?
Это другая позиция заключается в
That's a
гораздо
key,
более
Actually,
we
it's
can
even
scrap
tougher.
that, but you know, he makes a key point. I mean, in the West, you know, we do all this promotion of the alphabet people. We get the police with their, you know, their cars with the rainbows out, you know, plastered all over them. They don't park those cars outside a mosque, do they?
No.
They're not pushing that, and as soon as the Muslims push back on, you know, the alphabet stuff in school, the pride flags in school, you know, they won instantly. So we contain all of these, you know, weird contradictions. Whereas what Putin's done, he's basically just decided the line on several things and pushed them out of the political arena. So you can still do your you know, your special bedroom activities or whatever it is, but you just can't go around promoting them in schools.
I think the argument that people make is the personal is political. But you're right. You have to find a way to separate the two, because we have to find a way to coexist, right?
Yes.
I mean, with respect to Russia, they don't have to deal with the kind of demographics that the many Western countries do, where they don't have, you know, people from also, I mean, in Britain particularly, you have people from what used to be the empire all coexisting with different religions and different identities and all of that. I often tell people, you know,
Actually, Callum, you mentioned to me earlier, but they've had a lot more diversity lately.
No. So the Russian Federation is a big place. It has
Right.
Yeah.
ethnic minority republics,
Right.
which is obviously what makes it. It's not as Russian as people usually think. It's about 80-something%. But because the UK has become more and more diverse over time, we're now actually equaling them, even though they're a massive place that encompasses.
Oh, okay. Because it was built in from the end of the Soviet Union.
That
Okay.
says more about us.
Right,
They used to be
okay.
way more diverse. So when they were in Russian Imperial Empire, the Russians were actually a minority in the
Huh.
empire.
Okay, interesting.
but yeah, it's how do we coexist? How do we coexist with people that want to, you know, wave
Yeah.
the pride flag around and, you know, traditional
But I'm
Christians,
just
Muslims,
more
Jews
bothered
that
by the.
don't
but-
want their kids exposed to that sort of thing. I mean,
Yeah.
literally how do we coexist?
But I'm just more concerned with the contradictions that we have on this stuff. You
Oh,
know,
yeah.
we have these sort of, you know, the Muslims versus the alphabet people contradictions that we just sort of, you know, pretend aren't happening.
Notice how
and
it's
sort of gloss
notice
over.
how it's Muslims, not Christians, even though we technically live in a Christian country.
Yeah.
Which again,
This is the UK and the Anglosphere again, because I
Yes.
mean, you're correct to point out that look, Putin sits here and tells you the obvious truth, which is, you know, lots of these countries it's illegal to be. All the world religions agree on this, so I don't know why you're acting like this is so unusual. But he's not the only one. I mean, again, all of the Eastern European countries that people will promote on the same sort of lines, they've done the same thing where they say, okay, well, no homosexual propaganda. Hungary got criticized for this. And then when people said this will oppress homosexuals who want to live normal lives, it ended up oppressing people who wanted to make, well, phalluses in kids' faces.
that logic doesn't resonate with me. Either that or someone hasn't explained it to me properly. How would not having anything to do with a sexuality, any sort of, you know,
The argument goes that
how is that oppressing you?
So the argument goes that, oh, you want to be against homosexual propaganda. What you really mean is hating gay people. So you're going to stop telling kids that gay people exist and therefore they're going to go confuse the gay kids.
But why does it have to be one or the other? Why can't it just be?
Well, it never actually happens because that's not what the law says.
Well, because it's the same as the first segment. It's a massive grift. Whereas what Putin's doing here is he's basically just saying, look, that is out of the political sphere. You know, we're not going to waste our energies on this, which they can apply their energies to
I mean, the
something
argument that people make is that in sort of in kindergartens and in sort of when teaching young children, they talk about traditional families, so mommy and daddy and all of that. And then their argument is, why can't we have mommy and daddy and daddy? And I'm like, okay, let's have it this way. Teachers can stick to maths, geography, science, history, and all the rest of it. You leave anything to do with morality and sexuality at home. But then their argument is that, oh, well, then some kids don't learn. It was like, that's not your prerogative. You're not the parent of the child. And I keep pushing this, not because, one, it's a parental rights issue, but also you should be questioning why you think teachers should have the power to teach these kids these things when it really should be in the domain of the home and the values and the culture that the parents want to raise.
And why do they feel the need to push this stuff so much anyway?
That's what I find.
And the other criticism they always make of Putin is his tight grip on the media, which I'm sure that's true to an extent. But look, what we got over here is we've got
Western media or media in Russia.
Well, the Western criticism of Putin is going to be that his tight grip on media and he's controlling the news flow and all that kind of stuff. I don't know to what extent that's true.
Where are they?
In
Russia.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I mean, over here, you know, we got Julian Assange rotting in prison on false charges for decades. We've got cancellations. We've got demonetized. I mean, we've been demonetized here. We had a decent chunk of our revenue just snapped away from it because we're not towing the party line on stuff. So
it's not entirely dissimilar. Of course, it's worse than the Russian Federation press freedom, but
I'm not trying to say they're better. I'm just trying to say we're both at it.
But if you look at the launch of GB News, for example, the only television channel in this country that is not, well, basically pro-establishment de facto.
Yeah, regime.
The amount of abuse and harassment, and I mean, not from people whining on Twitter.
Oh, from Ofcom and stuff.
But yeah, not only Ofcom, but the state actors, politicians, and the advertisers being attacked. That being the main source of actually oppression in the West is destroying your ability to even operate financially, not just putting you in prison because that's too obvious. And so I kind of get annoyed when people are like, well, we're so different. It's like, we are different significantly, don't get me wrong, but we're not that different. Like it's freer in the United States than it is in the UK for sure. And well, the UK's got that problem again, where if you want to be actual opposition, it's not easy.
Yeah.
It's a pain.
Well, at a minimum, if we're going to criticize Putin for this stuff, we shouldn't be doing it ourselves, just not doing it to a slightly lesser extent. But I mean, the whole criticism, all this stuff comes down to basically the idea that, you know, we're a liberal democracy. And because we're a liberal democracy and Russia is a dictatorship, that means we get to choose our priorities. We get to choose what we want. We get to have our say.
I mean, I was having a conversation with a man who runs a think tank, and I was saying, you know, when you take a hardline position and say we are, you know, the arbiters of freedom, we are a liberal democracy, and all of that, you have to uphold certain standards because if not, you cannot go like James Cleverly going to China, be like, oh, by the way, let's you know have a more intimate economic relationship, but bad you for doing what you do to the Uyghurs. It's, you know, you can't. Normative values in international relations is a tricky thing because you just can't have it because economic interests usually trump.
Well, because we put everything into the political sphere and we've drawn no hard lines on anything like Putin is here. So, you know, when we say we're a liberal democracy, we get to choose what we want. So can I have justice for the 19,000 girls raped in South Yorkshire? No, I can't. You know, can I have pride kept out of schools? You know, no, I can't. Can I have less immigration like we've been promised repeatedly? No, I can't have that. Can I say no to ULEZ or 15-minute cities or
even when you win politically, get the votes to have immigration lowered, it still goes up.
I think the overarching question is who gets to control the Overton window, because the reality is once it's become accepted that, you know, this line of speech or this line of thought can be disseminated to the public, that's when the needle starts to move. That's what I've noticed. So who gets to control that? Who gets to
the power is with the globalists. You know, we have a prime minister who is literally a globalist installed leader. You know, Boris Johnson won an election and he was ousted. Liz Truss sort of won an election. I know it was only Conservative members, but then she was ousted, and we got a globalist put in. And we're about to have, you know, we're going to swap the blue team for the red team, and we're going to have another globalist, a literal member of the Trilateral Commission, who said he was more comfortable in Davos than he was in a British pub. Yeah. So, you know, we are ruled by a dictatorship. They just muddy everything and throw everything into the political and have us fighting amongst ourselves constantly, as opposed to this model where some guy just says yes and no, and then basically they get
I have unlimited terms and I win every election.
Yeah.
Well, at least you know where you stand.
But it's more honest than the globalist uni party that we have that wins every election and just says that we get to decide, but we don't.
Even when we do.
I think things are shifting. Definitely slower in the West, and I think definitely the kind of tie or the appeal of kind of the globalist agenda is more potent in English-speaking countries, English-speaking Western countries than the West in general. So you'd have, Germany, that's probably a bit more, it has the issue of the EU to deal with. But you have countries, I mean, like France, for instance, that have a bit more leeway there. But I do think it's mainly English-speaking Western countries. Yeah. The issue is we effectively have to take America's lead. And the more America realizes that it's in their best interest to be more regional or have more kind of regional priorities and more nationalist, I guess.
As long as the region doesn't extend to
the thing is region will shrink geographically. So you're going to look at sort of the kind of Canada, Mexico, America alliance become more pronounced in the next years because as a supply chain shift.
That will probably happen by default because China will become a regional superpower and become an uncontested regional superpower, which will force America to become a regional superpower.
Yeah, exactly. There's a lot of literature to suggest that a lot of countries are actually putting their regional and national interests first. I mean, that's kind of the evolution of prioritizing your national interests. Look at India. India's bought up a whole lot of cheap Russian oil and gas and is selling it on to the West.
They're just passing it through and marking up.
Exactly. So
is Indians explaining to us how arbitrage works?
I think the frustration is when you live in the UK and you look at the likes of the Sunaks and the Borises and all of that, you don't feel like there's hope.
My central frustration is that we're told we live in a democracy where we get to pick what goes on, and we're not. It's a globalist dictatorship, and this is another dictatorship. But it's just more honest, and actually the set of values behind it, which are more masculine and nationalistic, is like, go Russia. I just kind of think, well, why can't we have some of that energy here?
I have a theory because I think that people. So how people say that you're having too much choice is not a good thing because you become overwhelmed and you kind of try and look for a safety net somewhere with people that you trust or something like that. I think that's the same thing with what's happening in the West. There is a plethora of political thought and choices you can make, but people are only exposed to a little bit of it because whoever controls the Overton window on what's acceptable discussion is saying, actually, these are far right views or far left views that must be phased out of public discourse as much as possible, which is why you see the rise of independent media creators like this that still try and disseminate it as much as they can. And I think that's the fundamental issue. I don't think people think that they're allowed to want certain things. But I don't think people are allowed to want no immigration or stop the boats or I don't know, a masculine leader or whatever it is that can, that takes their fancy. And I think that's mainly the issue.
Yeah. And because it's zapping our national confidence, and I just wanted to end on a counter example of the positive sort of cultural confidence that you're seeing. Let's play this video. I love this one. We've got the sound. Better with the sound.
But these women are very hot. What is it with like hot Russian
women? This is a sort of.
Not a lizard.
In fact, Callum, can you explain what's going on here, Callum? Oh, wait for the music.
Okay, but they're very hot. Can I just? Has no one else noticed how sexy these women are?
My main thoughts is that's a party where I should be, I think.
Okay, so if you pause the audio, I'll explain the context here if I can. So my understanding is that is an event put on by United Russia, which is Putin's party. The reason there are all women in the front is because that's just good camera work. Get the women, they look good. The reason there's such good-looking women in Russia is because it's Russia. That it is true. It's a significant problem they have that every woman is a 10 out of 10 in the cities. It's madness.
Oh, that must be an awful problem to have. I mean,
terrible.
You'd hate that, wouldn't you?
Not a Lizzo-sized woman in sight.
It's horrific, I'm sure. But the thing they're singing there is "I'm Russian," which is a song by a pop singer who's very popular with the Kremlin. So it is a party event. Do not get this wrong. This is not some spontaneous event.
Can you imagine the young conservatives doing that?
No.
I mean, the young conservatives don't have much, in my experience, don't have much charisma to do that anyway.
But even if, let's take the most critical example of the young conservatives. Let's say they're all ugly creatures who have very little patriotism in them. I still can't imagine them all standing there and singing "Land of Hope and Glory" in a patriotic way.
Look at the strong cultural energy, the passion. It's just we just don't have any of this.
Even if it's the ruling party's event.
Yes. And we need a little bit more faith in ourselves. So, I don't like Putin, but he has got some things right.
If you appreciated that episode from the podcast of the Lotus Eaters, you can go to lotuseaters.com to get access to all the premium content that's on the site, such as the premium articles, this one on Half-Life 2, Atomic Heart, and the Nature of Evil, with an audio track for silver and gold tiers. If you'd like to find out what else is being put out, you can follow on Getter at lotuseaters_com on Getter. Thank you and goodbye.